already.
Hi, everyone. My name is Holman. I'm very glad to be here today to share some of my experience with you and learn together. So my background so I did computer engineering for undergraduate, and then I did computer science for my master degree. And when I was, which was many years ago, um, and at the time when I was doing my university study, I studied mainly Java and C++. So those are the main language that I studied when I was a university student. Um, and then when I graduated, I started a job in a bank, and they actually took 2 months to train us, uh, 2 month training to train us on something called RPG, which is the name of a language. It's not the game, not role play game, but it's more like I think it's called report generation language. It's a very old language, and since that is too old, even for my time, it was a very old thing. They expect none of us would know this language, and that's the reason why they spent 2 months to train us on to learn this language, and that thing ran on computer called AS400. It's an IBM product. Those are very huge computers that usually it's like a fridge in a kitchen, or maybe bigger. And typically they have a bunch of only like huge companies or banks or financial institutions, they can afford those computers because they are very expensive. And they usually have like a bunch of them. Uh, they place that side by side in a room with air condition and humidity control and so on. So it's pretty cool. But that is very old technology. Um, and then after that, I feel that I don't want to do old stuff for the rest of my life. It seems too boring. So, so I spent some time to learn Java. Uh, I mean, by learning Java, I mean doing some certification to to make it better. Um, and later on, I switched jobs to other more technical company. And currently, I'm doing JavaScript. I've been doing JavaScript for I think 8 years, maybe. Yeah, I think around 8 years. Because before that, usually when we do web development, maybe 10 years plus before, we most of us would use Java. J2EE is one popular framework that we would use maybe 10 years ago. But nowadays, recent years, people are switching more from Java to JavaScript for the reason that I'm going to go through when we're doing this course here. Yeah, but basically, I spent my last 8 years on JavaScript. I do web development for a cloud platform web interface. Um, so yeah, so I'm thinking the way I would like to use this time. I know the Udemy. So I'm assuming all of you have access to Udemy, the Udemy course, right? And you would watch the video beforehand before you come to the class. I have also watched the video, and I find that course pretty good. I think it is a very complete course already. So I'm not going to use this 1 to 1.5 hour to repeat what is already mentioned in the course because that is not the best use of your precious time here. So instead, I would like to use this time to do a few things. We can ask questions. So if you have any questions or anything related to this particular lesson in the past week, or even not related, but related to JavaScript in general, feel free to let me know. I'd like to help you as far as I can. So questions would be a very important thing, and that depends on you, like asking the questions. Um, and then, and the other thing I would like to do is to maybe go through some additional comments that I have from this lesson, right? So when I go through the lesson, maybe there's something that I want to mention a bit more, want to make sure you understand that, or maybe I want to add more information. So I would also do that. And also, I would like to go through some of the, whenever possible, I would like to share some of my experience in real world application, real world example, how are we doing this thing in the real world? Um, those kind of topics. I think that would be also a value, of some value to you. So any suggestions or anything that you want to, want us to do in this time, that I have not mentioned? I want to make sure we optimize the use of this time. So what I have in mind is you asking questions. I go through some comment that I have in this lesson, and also share some of the real world experience examples. Maybe we can also go through some questions together so that we can make sure our understanding is good. So those are the things that I have in mind. But if you have anything that you have in mind that you want to do in this time, let me know now or later, at any time whenever you think of it. I want to make sure we make the best use of this time. That's all. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Homer. Any comments? Do you want to?
Yeah. Any comment? Any questions
Any?
or any concern?
Hello, teacher. I have a question.
Yep. Sorry. Hi. Yeah.
Yes. Like I already study basic JavaScript, but when I build a project, I don't know what to apply to the project. Like I don't have an idea
Oh, you
to
mean
apply
you?
like for loop,
Yeah.
for each, and like something like that.
So do you mean you have gone through the course and you have basically studied JavaScript as a language, but you
Yes.
have questions on how to apply that in real life? Is that what your question is?
Yes. Yes.
Mm. Okay, that's a really great question.
Yes. Thank you,
I
teacher,
will go
for the
through that.
answer.
Yeah, I would, let's go through that today. I'm going to talk about that as well. And that is a very good question, actually, because if we just go through the course itself on Udemy, it is a very complete course, but it may not necessarily tell you how to use it, at least from this past week, this section from past week. So I'll go through that today. Um, so any other comments or anything before we move on? Okay, perfect. So I think I would like to start by um, asking a few questions. So yeah, so for this first session lesson here, you have gone through the Udemy video. So how do you think? Um, would you say it is very easy for you, or is it hard? So if one is easiest and hard is being the most difficult, how you rate this lesson? I want to just get a sense of where we are to level set. So maybe Pontiac, can you start? Do you find that easy or hard between 1 and 10?
Uh, uh, to me, that I have completed this course, but I haven't really review it all over again. But for me, I'll give it difficulty from 6 to 7 because I believe that for students who's fresh, it's very difficult for them to learn from this course unless we have like guidance like from. For me, we have teacher Yuki at the time who guide us. So, but for students who go by themselves all alone, it's very difficult for them.
So
From my perspective, they won't make it. They will not be able to make it. It's quite difficult
mm,
to be honest. Yes.
so you mean sorry, the audio is not exactly good, but I think what I'm hearing is that you're saying it is a bit difficult, 6 to 7 kind
Yes.
of difficult.
Yes, a bit
Um,
difficult, and unless
yeah.
I mean it's complete, but unless we have like a mentor, someone to guide us. If you go alone and you're fresh, you're beginner, it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
I see. I see. Oh, thank you for the feedback. It is very,
Yes.
very important to know that.
Yes. Thank
Because
you.
for me, when I go through the course, it is pretty natural for me to feel that it is complete and easy to follow. But it's very good that you bring this up. Okay, so I would put more focus in reviewing the material, and feel free to ask any questions anytime. Um, I would like to help as much as I can. Thanks. Okay, so how about sorry? Do you find that easy or hard?
For me, I think I have learned like basic programming like C, C++, and it's not too different, so it's not really complicated for me.
Okay, perfect. So it's not too hard for you to follow. Great, good to
Yes,
hear.
but in the Udemy course, it don't really have a lot of exercise like a big project.
Got it. Okay,
That's
so
all.
not too hard. Okay, thank you. Yi, do you find that easy or hard?
Personally, I have just watched until the first section, introduction, so I think it's quite okay, not too difficult and not too easy for me.
Okay, good to know. Hannah?
Okay, so I think it's might be not hard for some students who used to study the other code, like other language before, like C++, Pythons. So I think it's a bit similar, but it might be have different syntax and other. But I will look forward to it, but I'm not saying that it's easy. Yes.
Okay, thanks for the humble answer. Perfect. Oh, Mania, what do you think? Mania? Okay, maybe the audio internet connection. That's okay. Okay, so I think I've got a basic idea of where we are at. Okay, so first of all, I would like to. Okay, let me share my screen.
Can you share? I think you can share it.
I can. Oh, okay. I may have to drop and rejoin because I have to enable the permission. So let me try that.
Okay. Let me check here.
Okay, I have to quit and reopen. So I'll be back in a second.
So do you think it would be good if we had some exercise? Like this topic is about variables. Maybe if you have one project and I will not going to finish the project, but I will ask about which variables we need to use in this project. You know? I have some exercise, but extra exercise. But it's about it's homework. It's more work for you. You know? I don't want to give for you more homework. Like for example, if we want to create a timer keeper with JavaScript, which kind of variable you need? Okay, we are not going to do because we don't know JavaScript yet, but the first step is to see which variable we need to use. A Boolean, a string, a number, whatever, okay? That's why I'm asking this one. I can send to you. And maybe we can discuss during the lesson. Let's see. I think Mr. Homo, you bring some real examples to you. You can join. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me try sharing again.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, do you see my screen? Do
Yeah.
you see my screen?
Yeah.
Wikipedia? Yes, right? Okay, so perfect. So before we talk about the JavaScript language as a language, I would like to talk about something called dynamic HTML, which is
Can I have a please don't try to search for this now. I'm here to do that. I kept this link and I send later to you. Okay, for all of you. You don't need to search this one in the internet now.
Yeah, there is no need to search. And
yeah,
I
I search. I'll share the link later with them.
Okay, thanks, Yuki.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about something called dynamic HTML, which is not a thing anymore nowadays. But the reason I want to talk about that is to help you to understand, to get a background of how JavaScript has evolved and how it evolved to what it is today. And I think this is a very important understanding. Learning the syntax is not too difficult, in my opinion, but to appreciate how to use it and how to apply that in real life, like one of the students mentioned today, I think that is something that I would like to help you with. So dynamic HTML is a very old thing. It was popular in the year of around 1997. People say dynamic HTML or DHTML. And what it basically does is it is a way to, it is basically a package that has both HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and they work together. They work together to show something more dynamic on the screen. Because back in the days when it was like before the year 2000, web pages are pretty much static. They show information, very static information, like the Wikipedia page we see, static information, nothing fancy. But then people started to realize that if we use a little bit of coding using JavaScript, we can make the page more fancy, like animation, maybe some counter or something, to make it a little bit more interesting. And that's the reason why they name it dynamic HTML. So that was the first or early application of JavaScript in the early days. So today we are learning JavaScript, which is the same language, but it is very different than the JavaScript that was first introduced in 1997 as the HTML, because the syntax has evolved. It has changed a lot, and we are going to talk about a little bit about that as well. But just keep that in mind. The HTML is not important now, but it's important for you to understand how JavaScript evolved by understanding what the HTML is. And since the only purpose of the HTML is to make the page more interesting and more fancy, it doesn't have any server-side communication. Like typically when we do a web interface, we have a client-server architecture. I will pause a little bit here. Can you raise your hand if you don't know what client-server architecture means? If you do not know what client-server, okay, I saw a couple of hands. Okay, so let me go through that a little bit. Okay, let me try to draw something. Okay, if you don't see my screen, let me know, okay? So, so clients, usually when we talk about client in this case, is the web browser, right? And then there is a server. So what happens is that typically when you type a URL in the address bar of a browser, right, it will send a page request from your browser, which is the client, to the server, which is somewhere. It's a computer somewhere, right? So this is a page request, meaning I type this URL in my address bar. I want to go to this web page, right? So this is called page request. And then the server will get the URL from the page request along with some parameters that we are not going to go into details today, but it's a request with URL and some parameters. And then the server will do some processing, and then it will respond by returning or serving a page. So this is the actual web page, right? That the server will serve the web page to the client. So basically, when you type something in the address bar, you hit enter, the browser fires off a page request to some server. And this will go through a bunch of URL resolution. Like basically, it goes through a bunch of complicated stuff to find one server somewhere to fulfill your request. And then it will process that, and then it will return a web page back to you. So that is the client-server architecture. So basically, that is what it means. And then when we learn HTML and CSS earlier, if you have gone through the previous section of this course, HTML and CSS, they are purely client-side things. So if you write a file called something.html with something.css as the style sheet, all those things are handled in the browser itself. And that's the reason why you can, in your computer, you can open a notepad or any text editor. You can type up some HTML file. You can type up some CSS, and then you can just open the file and it works, right? There's no server involved here. It's purely client-side. So HTML, CSS lives here. And the JavaScript in the DHTML time, it is also on the client side only. So meaning the only thing the server does is to respond with a page that has some script inside, which we'll look at briefly today. And then everything else, including the rendering of the HTML, the CSS, and the actual JavaScript execution, they are all running on the client side. So that is the DHTML model. Nowadays, things are very different. The server would perform a lot of more processing, more logic. Imagine you go to some internet banking, or maybe you go to some government website that requires you to sign in and then look at your account. Obviously, those things cannot be handled on the client side alone, right? The server has to do something. And typically, the server would even need to get some data, right, from some database, like something like this, right? It has to get data from database to handle the request. So this is the picture I would like you to have in mind, right? Client being the web server, the web browser, and then there is a server somewhere that would respond with a web page. So page request, web page as a response. So that is the model that we are looking at. Is it clear? Any questions? Perfect. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so let's go back here. Yeah, so DHTML, everything happens on the client side, and what it does is just very minimal. It's like animating some text and doing. Sometimes there may be a counter somewhere telling you you are the 10th visitor of the page. I don't think they do that anymore. That is very old stuff. But those kind of tiny things that they can do. And now, as I mentioned, DHTML is no longer a thing today. No one uses it. The reason is that there are lots of reasons, right? First of all, we have much better technology we can use now, which is still based on JavaScript, but in a different way. And the other reason is a more technical reason, which is that we have different kind of browsers. For example, I'm using Chrome today. I also have Safari on my Mac. And if you use a Windows machine, you may use Edge and so on, or Firefox, right? So different browsers. So when companies implement their browser, they will have to follow some standard, right? Without the standard, they would not work. Because if I look at the same web page here, using different browser, I would expect to see the same thing, right? And I do because all the browsers, or most of the browsers, would implement using according to some sort of standard. That is the main reason. However, even though they have been following the standard, there are still differences between browsers, and there are quite a lot of differences. And when we use the HTML, we interact with the DOM directly. The DOM is DOM, which stands for Document Object Model. So what is a DOM? If you open a browser and then you do inspect, you will see, and then you go to the Elements tab. So I'm on a Chrome browser. I inspect, I right click and then do inspect. And then I will see this thing. And if you switch to the Element tab, you will see something like this, which is basically an HTML. But this is the DOM. So you may ask, this is an HTML, this is not a DOM, right? So HTML and DOM are like program and processes. So HTML is the language you use to write web pages, right? You can write HTML in a text form, in a text file. But then when a browser render or process the HTML file or data, it will render or display this page, right? So, and the browser actually would read the HTML and then build a model in the memory. And that model is like a tree. That tree model is called the DOM, the Document Object Model. And that's the reason why it looks like HTML, but it's actually a DOM. Make sense? Okay, perfect. Sorry, I cannot see your face when I'm sharing the screen, so I have to do this from time to time. Bear with me. So this is the DOM. So in the HTML time, we usually use JavaScript to interact with the DOM directly. I can show you one real quick example here. Okay, so you see the title uses here. If I inspect these uses, it's actually an H2 element, right? An H2 element in this DOM here, right? So, and it has the ID uses. So if I'm to write the HTML to maybe change the background color, for example, for this uses thing here, what I can do document.get element by ID, and then I will do uses. If I do this and hit enter, I will see this element, right? And if you hover, you will see the corresponding thing on the screen with highlights, right? Because I'm able to find this node. This is called node, N-O-D-E node, a node in the DOM, which correspond to this node in here. So once I can locate this node, I can do things like let's see if that works. Yeah, if I change the text color to red, you will see it is changed, right? So this is what I meant by interacting with the DOM, because I'm using JavaScript. So this is JavaScript. I use JavaScript to change or manipulate the DOM. So when I do that, I can do many fancy things. I can change color, I can do animation, I can show or hide the text. For example, I can do like, if I change the display to none, it's gone, right? It's gone. But then if I change that back to block, you see that back. So this is why people name that as dynamic HTML, because it makes the HTML a bit more dynamic. Things can change on the screen and more fancy. At that time, it was a big deal. It is very impressive at that time. So yeah, so this is a structure of a web page. As we know, HTML as the roots, and then there is a head and a body here. Typically, you can put a script tag or a script node somewhere in the head or in the body. Actually, I would put that in the head. In the head, meaning if you put this in the head, it will ensure that the browser will make sure it will load this script before it actually display the page, which is usually a better practice. But anyways, in this example here, you see a head, a body, and then a tiny script here. So this is how you can inject JavaScript in a page. So back to the question asked earlier about how we can use JavaScript, right, in real life. So this is the first application of JavaScript in real life back in the pre-2000 time. People do this kind of scripting typically inside HTML to do animation and other stuff, and this is called the HTML. So this is one example of how we can apply. Yeah, just want to, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but basically I just want to give you some taste of what we can do with JavaScript. And you can also open your browser and play with that like this, right? This would be a good practice. I think the Udemy course also suggests us to do something like this. But you can, instead of doing like pure JavaScripting thing, you can also interact with web pages like what I just did. It's more fun. So any questions so far? Yeah, I guess the main point I want to mention here is that, again, the HTML is not popular anymore. So don't tell anyone that your teacher teach you the HTML. People will laugh at you, right? The reason I bring that up is just to give you some idea, some background, right? And to partially answer the question of how we can apply JavaScript in real life. This is one example of how we applied many years ago, right? And then the next topic I would like to go through would be, let me see. Okay. So I mentioned earlier that the syntax of JavaScript nowadays are very different than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. And the reason is because this language is evolving and it continues to evolve. So meaning if you learn JavaScript today and then you know the syntax, you think you know everything. And then a year or two later, you will find some new stuff that would come up. The reason is that people keep improving this language. They keep adding more feature. They change the syntax to solve different problems. So, and you may come across the term ECMAScript here, ECMA ECMAScript. I don't remember the full form of this thing. You can search it up, but basically it is a standard for some scripting languages. And here are a few examples of scripting languages. JavaScript, JScript, I honestly don't know. I think that is from Microsoft, but I haven't used that before. ActionScript is something from Adobe. You know Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Acrobat Reader. So Adobe ActionScript. If you know something called Flash, it was quite popular maybe 10 years ago. Nowadays we don't use that. We don't use that anymore because there are security issues. But Flash make very heavy use of ActionScript. But anyways, those are very similar. JavaScript, JScript, and ActionScript, they are very similar, and they all fall under the ECMAScript category or family. And the reason why, the main reason behind this ECMAScript is to ensure the interoperability of web pages across browsers. This is what I said before, like different implementation of browsers would have differences, right? Chrome would be different than Firefox, which would be different than Edge, for example. And if you use pure JavaScript, it would be problematic because if you write a page using JavaScript and you test that in Chrome, for example, right? It may not have the exact same behavior when the page is rendered in Firefox, for example, because of the browser differences, and it is very problematic. So because of those problems, many years ago, when we wrote JavaScript, we have to actually test the pages in all the major browsers to make sure the page can work everywhere. And sometimes you may have to do something called polyfill, 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 which is basically a way to fill the gap between browsers. It is a mess. It's very problematic. And because of that reason, ECMAScript was introduced, and basically it tried to standardize the language so that you can write the JavaScript as in one version, and then you can use something. There are some tool that would help you to the process is called transpiling, transpile. So if you do computer science, you probably come across the term compile, right? So you write some code, you compile that to binaries, executables that computer can understand, ones and zeros. Transpiling is a little different. It's similar but different than compiling, because transpiling means you transpile or transform JavaScript that you wrote, you type in the using your keyboard, it transformed that into still JavaScript, but a little different, more a little lower level, but not like binary code. You can still read that, it's still text, but it would be something that would be backward compatible with older browsers. So meaning if you nowadays, if you do JavaScripting for a web application, you would use some tool to transpile that into into a more into a different form of JavaScript. That is still text scripting, but that is a little better in terms of interoperability across browsers. So that thing that are transpiled would run, would have the same behavior across different browsers. I would pause for 1 second. Is it confusing, or is it? Do you understand what I'm talking about here around transpiling? If you don't, if you have any question, raise your hand. I would clarify. Okay, perfect. So just to give a little bit more to that, if you look up to a tool called Babel, B-A-B-E-L. If you search Babel transpiler, for example, you will see this Babel project. So basically what it does is that it will, you put in some input JavaScript that you type, and then it will transpile to another form of JavaScript that will work across browsers. So that is one of the popular tools that we use to make sure your code can run the same, have the same behavior across browsers. So just to keep that in mind. And because we have the transpiler, it allows us to evolve the language, to introduce new syntax or change the syntax and so on to solve the problem that that we face over time. So, and that's the reason why this language is evolving. It changes a lot. And it's important to understand the reason why it keeps changing and why it can change, right? One example, if you remember this past week's lesson, the instructor in Udemy talked about using let and const to declare variables, right? And he said that this is the new recommended approach. We should no longer use var. So var was the way we declare variable in the old days. But then it turns out this is very problematic. The reason, one of the main reason, I think, yeah, one of the main reason is that it is about scoping. I would like to go through that in a second, but basically, scoping is a very important concept in programming. When you declare a variable, where can you access the variable, right? That is called scoping. And there are different types of scoping, like function scoping or block scoping. I will give you one example later on, but just keep that in mind. So changing from var to let and const, because var is only function scoped. It doesn't support block scoping. So meaning if you have a function and then you declare a variable using var, that variable can be changed in different parts of that function. And if you have a function that is really big, it will be very hard to debug or to find out issues, right? Because that variable can be changed in different parts of that function. So it will be very messy. For very simple function, there is no issue. But in real world scenario, we typically have very complex logic, huge functions. And in that case, if we use var, it could be very problematic. And that's the reason why in ECMAScript 2015, so this is the year this version is introduced. They introduced the keyword let and const. So let is a way to declare a variable that can be changed. Const is a constant that cannot be changed. I'll go through an example, but keep that in mind. That is one of the example of how JavaScript evolved. Another problem with JavaScript is that it is weakly typed. Even ECMAScript is weakly typed. So what I meant by weakly typed is that if you learn Java or C++, they are very strong type languages, meaning when you declare a variable, you have to explicitly declare the type of that variable, whether it's a string, it's a number, it's a Boolean, or whatever, right? So you have to declare the type, and you cannot easily change from one type to another. In Java, we have casting. We can cast from one type to another, but you have to do casting. You cannot just assign. But in JavaScript, you can do whatever you want. I can show you one example real quick here to show you what I meant. So if you open a console here, and then you do a let thing equals thing. So if I type thing, it will evaluate this thing, and it will show the contents, the value, which is thing, right? So at this time, this is a string. If I use the type of operation, I will see that thing is a string. But if I now do an assignment, I assign one to thing, meaning I store one into this variable. And then when you type thing, it evaluates to the number one because I just assigned that in here, right? So it is changed from this string to this number. So notice they are different, they are of different types. So if I now do the same thing, it becomes number. So this is what I meant by weakly typed. I can do whatever I want, and then the type of the variable depends on the value, which in my opinion is really bad. But that's the way it is. So even in ECMAScript, it is weakly typed. And if you may come across something called TypeScript, since we are talking about types. If you search up TypeScript, not transpiler, but TypeScript. So TypeScript is another flavor of JavaScript. So you don't need to worry about that because it is very similar to JavaScript. Once you learn JavaScript, it's not hard to learn TypeScript. So the main difference or the main point of variable type, strongly typed language. So keep that in mind. So that is we have weakly typed ECMAScript. We have strongly typed TypeScript, which is another flavor of JavaScript. All right, so ECMAScript transpiling, we talked about that. Yeah, so transpiling is source-to-source compilation. We transform the source to something that would work across browsers. It would enforce backward compatibility so that other browsers would also work. We talk about polyfills. Polyfills is a bunch of code that you use to handle the gap between browsers, which is very problematic. We don't want to deal with that. We would usually use the transpiler to handle those gaps, those differences. Okay, so enough about ECMAScript. I would very quickly talk about the versioning of ECMAScript because you will come across that. I'm not going to go through all the history, so don't worry. But a few versions are worth noticing. So the ECMAScript 2015, which is the standard of ECMAScript introduced in this year, we usually call that ES6 because it's version 6. So the first column here is called the edition 6 or version 6. So we call that ES6 or ES 2015. So you will see them, they are the same thing. ES6 equals ES 2015. So that refer to the standard or the version of ECMAScript or JavaScript introduced in this year. So this is a turning point because this is the time when the let and I think the let and const are introduced in this version, which is a huge change, and along with other improvements. And then there are many, like almost every year there's a new version. So the latest is ES16. So you don't need to worry too much about this, but I just want you to keep in mind that JavaScript is a language that keeps evolving. It changes every year. So you learn that now, you will get all the basic idea, and then you will basically master the language, and you don't need to worry about the version changes, because it won't change that to an entirely different language, right? It just keep evolving and improving. So, but it's important to understand this thing so that when you come across the term ES6, you know what that means. Okay, so far so good. Great. Okay, no one is sleeping, so I think it's good. Okay, so I would like to go through. Okay, 1 second. Let me see what I want to go to next. All right, so a few things around this lesson in the past week. I remember he talks about something called around chickens, right? Let num hens equal 1, 2 hens, and then let num chickens equals 3, right? And then if I do, actually no, it's rooster. You know what? Just forget about this. I don't like chicken, so let's do 3. So I remember he mentioned some. So we declare a variable called apples, assign a value of 2 to it. Do the same thing for oranges with a value of 3. And then we declare a third variable, fruits, which is the sum of apples and oranges. If we evaluate fruit, it shows 5. I just want to mention one thing real quick. How many of you understand this, what this equal sign means? If you do, can you raise your hand? I have to find a way to look at your screen. Okay, let me actually do this. Can you still see my screen? Like okay, perfect. Thanks, Yuki. So how many of you know what this equal sign actually means? If you do, can you raise your hand? Oh, perfect. I see Pontiac. Okay, perfect. Yes, excellent. So can I pick a volunteer to explain to me what that equal sign means?
It
Can
means
I have a volunteer?
it's like we assign a value to variable.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. It's important to understand this. This is called an assignment operator. We basically assign the value of 2 to apples, meaning I store this value to apples, right? The reason I want to bring this up is because there are different, in JavaScript, we have 1 equal sign, we have 2 equal sign, and we have 3 equal sign, right? So they have different operators. So 1 equal sign, we all know is assignment operator is assign or store value, right, to variables. So if I do apples and then 2 equal sign oranges, do you know what that means? Anyone know what that means? You can unmute and then explain that.
Like you try to compare like the two values, like make it equal. Yeah. Equal.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, excellent. Yes, this 2 equal sign means comparison, right? Comparison operator. So I'm trying to compare apples to oranges. And since they have different numbers, it evaluates to false, right? So this is easy to understand. But how about three equal sign? So it will also evaluate to false. But do you know why? Do you know what's the difference between 2 equal sign and 3 equal sign? If I ask this question to my kids, they will say they differ by 1 equal sign. So anyone?
3 is about like the type. They compare the type.
Excellent, excellent. Yes. So 3 equal sign is called a strict comparison operator. Let me try to find an example. Okay, if I do 1, so if you see this one, I check if 1 is equal to 1. So this one here is a number, and the second one here is a string, right? I know we haven't gone through this, but most of you have already gone through the entire course, so I would talk about this. So if I check whether the number 1 equals the string 1, if I use the 2 equal sign, it would evaluate to true. The reason is that the 2 equal sign, the comparison operator would ignore the type. It would cast or change the type and then do the comparison. But then if I do the same thing with 3 equal sign, it will show false because they are of different types. So this is called strict comparison operator. So similar to the 2 equal sign, but this is a strict comparison, meaning both the value and the type has to match for it to return true. So far so good? Perfect. Great. And good job, Ponya. You can help me teach next time. All right. Okay, so so this is the assignment operator that I want to quickly go through. And then, okay. Okay, 1 second here. Let me just okay, and then there is an increment and decrement operator, right? I also want to talk about that quickly. So we all know that plus plus means add 1 to it, right? And I think the Udemy course also mentioned the difference between a like putting that before like a prefix versus postfix kind of way, putting the 2 plus sign before or after. I want to make sure we are all clear on this, so I would go through that again. So in this example, right, x is assigned the value of 3, y is assigned the value of x plus plus. So since the plus here appears after the x, that means we will first assign the value of x to y and then increment x. And that's the reason why, if you print that out, y will have a value of 3, because that is the value of x before it is incremented, right? But then x would show 4 because x is already incremented at this point. Is it clear? Anyone have any questions? If you're not clear, raise your hand and I'll make sure I explain that again. Yeah, Anya? What's your question?
Not really question, but I'm a bit like I haven't follow up on this part yet. Yes.
So do you understand the difference when we place the increment operator before and after?
Not really. Can you explain it? Yes, because
Sure, yes.
I'm not familiar with this kind of syntax.
Okay, no problem. Let me do that again. So here we first assign the value of 3, the number 3, right, to x. So at this point, x has the type of a number with the value of 3, right? And then in here, I declare a constant called y, and I assign that with the value of x plus plus. So what it means, if I assign that to x, is very simple, right? It will be 3, that's all, right? But x plus plus means I would first I would first, because the x appeared before the plus plus, that means I will first assign the value of 3, sorry, the value of x, which is 3 at this point, to y. And after the assignment, I will increment x, right? So since I first assign the value of x to y before it's incremented, y would contain the value of 3 because it is the value of x before it is incremented, right? Is it okay, or is it
Yes,
more
I'm
confusing?
clear now.
Yes.
I'm clear
Okay,
now.
perfect.
I
Perfect.
was not familiar with the syntax. Yes, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I think that could be tricky, so that's why I want to mention that quickly here. But on the other hand, if I look at this second example starting line 7 here, if I assign the value 3 to a, and then I do this const b equals plus plus a, that would mean that I would first increment, because the increment operator appear first. So that means I would first increment a before I do the assignment, right? So that means I would first increment a from 3 to 4, and then I would assign 4 to b. And that's the reason why in this console log line here, so console log means I want to print out something, right? If I print out a and b, they would both have the value of 4. Are we good? Perfect. Okay. How about Hannah, Yi, and Manya? If you understand what I'm explaining, can you raise your hand? I just want to make sure.
Yes, I understand.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Good. So let's move on. So that's what I want to just make sure we all understand. Okay, so go back to the. So the next thing I want to talk about is the difference between var and let and const. We talked a little bit about that when we were going through the ECMAScript, but I would like to show you one example because I think that is a very good example. Okay, so let me bring it here. Okay. Okay, so so we know that we can declare variable using let, var, or const, and we should no longer use var. Var is old. It works, but it is not recommended, so we should not use var. So in this example here, yeah, I want to show you the difference between var and let, because const is very easy to understand. It's constant, right? So once you declare that, you cannot change the value. That's all. But both let and var, they declare variables that can be changed. So what are the differences, right? So first, let's look at this function here. So I know we haven't talked about function officially, but I assume most of us would understand. So just bear with me in case you don't. Basically, this is a block of code. It will execute sequentially, right? So initially, I declare using var, the variable x assign 1 to it. And then I have this block here, this if block. So this is if true, meaning it will always execute. Here I declare again x and assign that to 2, right? So at this point, at this very point here, it will print 2 because I just assigned 2 to x, right? And then I print that out, it will show 2. So that's easy, right? The tricky part is here. After this if block here, if I print this again, it will still print 2. Why? Because the value of x has been modified in here, inside this if block. So even though initially I assign 1 to it, in this if block here, I change the value to 2. Even after this block, the value of x is still 2. This is a huge problem. The reason why it is a huge problem is because imagine this is a huge function, thousands of lines of code, right? And then you declare a variable initially in the beginning here. And then somewhere you declare something, you want to do something, but somehow you use the same name unintentionally, right? Unintentionally, you use the same name. And you're thinking, okay, I do something inside this block, it should only affect this block. Unfortunately, since you're using var, it got polluted or leaked. So this this assignment here would impact the x. So this is called function scope, because the scope of this variable is the function, right? It can be seen everywhere in the function, and this is bad. Right? Are we okay? Do you understand what I'm talking? It is not non-trivial, so if you don't understand, it's okay. And especially when we look at a very simple example like this, we may not appreciate immediately why this is a problem. But when as you have a more and more real-world experience working with huge functions, bad code, debugging code, and so on, you will understand why function scope is bad, because it is very error prone. The variable you declare here can be changed elsewhere in the function without you noticing. So if we use let, it will have a different behavior. So here I declare x using let, assign that to 1, and then in this same block here, I again do let x equals 2. So obviously here it will print 2, right? There is no question about this. But here, after this block, now this console line here is outside of this if block. So the assignment of 2 to x only impacts this block here. This is called a block scope. So the scope of x is only confined inside this block here. So only this, within this block, I will see x having a value of 2. As soon as we exit this block, after this line here onwards, it will revert back to the initial value of 1. So this is much better, because that means you will not be they will not be interfering each other, right? Even if you unintentionally define use the same name of the variable inside this block, it will not leak out. And typically, this kind of block will not be too long. If you see a if block which is like hundreds of lines of code, that means you're looking at some bad code. You should probably improve it, right? Because it's not very readable. But the function could be longer. So yeah, so just want to point that out. Function scope versus block scope. Block scope is much better, and that's the reason why the let operator is block scope. Okay, so that's one thing I want to point out. Any questions? Okay. If not, I have one question for you. Okay, so we talk about Boolean, right? Boolean type, very simple, either true or false, yes or no kind of thing. If I write a program using JavaScript, and I want to represent something like something that is yes or no, right? Obviously I can use a Boolean type, but I can also use a number, right? I can use the number 0 to represent no. I can use the number 1 to represent yes. So why would I not use the numbers 1 and 0 to represent yes and no, but use the Boolean? Well, what is the value? What is the reason we need to use the Boolean? Right? So I can use 1 to mean yes, right? And then use 0 to represent a no. That will also work, right? Because I can do things like if results compared to 1, that means it is a yes, right? So it will work. But why would I bother defining this variable as a Boolean? Can you think of a reason? So example is like this. So this is a Boolean, right? And then if I do so if I do this, I declare a variable as a Boolean type because I assign the true value to it, right? So it is a Boolean, right? I can do this if statement here. Since it is true, it print out yes, right? So this is okay. But I can also do so this will have the same result, right? I've declared that as a number. And then if I will check if the number is 1, I will print yes. It will also be yes, right? Because I'm comparing this number with the number 1. Even if I do 3 equals, it will still print yes. So since they have the same behavior, why do I bother? Why do I use true, false instead of 0 and 1?
I think it has something, but I assume it has something to do with clarity, data type, and it might somehow relates to like operator, and it might cause some confusion to other developers as well when we work in larger projects. Yes, that's
Yeah,
my assumption.
excellent,
Yes.
excellent answer. Yeah, I will agree with you. So if we, so on a low level, right? If we need to represent a Boolean, true, false, we just need 1 bit, right? We all know that 8-bit would make 1 byte, right? So to represent a Boolean, we just need 1 bit, 0 or 1 in the binary form. So that is very, very space efficient and memory efficient. And the other reason is that if we use number to represent true, false, there is a, so what if the number is 3, right? It's something other than 0 or 1, then what to do, right? So it will be very messy. So if we write code, so I just want to mention this because as you write JavaScript, sometimes if you know that the variable represents something that is true or false, then make sure you use the Boolean type because you can easily achieve the same thing with other types, even a string, right? You can do like this, right? And then you can use the string true to represent true. Similar concept as the number, right? So, but don't do that, right? If it is true, false, use Boolean, because otherwise you may have very tricky problem like this, right? And then if you do like if you do this, if s equals true, I print yes, otherwise print no. It prints no, even though I have true. Why? Because this is uppercase, right? So this doesn't work. So this would be a bug. So this is tricky, right? And this happens in real life. I saw some people actually do that, right? So don't do that. Use Boolean. Use Boolean means, first example here, use this true here without any quote, anything. This is a Boolean type. It will make your code much more robust and safe. Okay, so I think that's all I want to add to what you have already learned in the Udemy video. And I would like to wrap up with a few questions. First of all, any questions? Is there anything you want me to clarify?
Not yet clear for today. Yes.
Great. Okay, so one second here. Okay, I have a little quiz for you. So if you don't ask me question, I'll ask you questions, okay? Okay, so for all the questions, when you know the answer, just unmute and shout it out, okay? So what is the purpose of the type of operator in JavaScript?
To check for data.
Yeah, to check the data type. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so that's correct. Second one, how do you declare a variable in JavaScript?
Use that.
Let, yes. This is tricky. You can do that, but don't do that. Right. Okay, so and the next one. Next one. Okay, so 3 equal sign. Okay, anyone? How about Yi or Hannah? Any idea? What does this do? 3 equal sign.
I think it A.
A, yes. Compares value, right? So this means without changing or casting the type. So if the type doesn't match, then it will fail, right? It doesn't convert the type. So yes, it's the A. Answer is A. How do you comment a single line? Yi, do you know the answer? How do you add a comment in the JavaScript code?
A.
A, okay, perfect answer. You can also do this, but for single line, we typically do this. So just to make it super clear, let me just show you quickly. So if you do this thing, right, it is a single line comment, but sometimes you may want to do like, and then you want to, it's pretty hard to show you here, but you just want to put comments somewhere in the code without occupying the entire line, then you can use this approach. This also works. When you see larger code, you will find that useful, but keep that in mind, that is also valid. So both this syntax or the double slash syntax. But for single line, it is A. So E is correct. Okay, so which of the following code fragments are comments?
Last one.
Last one, right? Is that all?
And first one also.
Yes, and first one also, yes. So this is not correct. Okay, so this is a very common way to do comments in other languages, but not JavaScript. So JavaScript only 2 slashes or this thing. Okay, which ones are valid variable decorations? So it could be one or more. Okay.
Yeah, cons and left.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Cons and left.
Do you say first and last?
Yes. The
Yes,
cons and left. Yeah, first and last.
Yeah, that's right. Cons and last. Yes, that's perfect. Yes. Excellent. Okay, so since you guys are all very smart, I want to ask you more difficult questions. Okay. So what will this do? So this code here, and there are 4 possibilities for you to choose. I'll give you a few moments. Take your time to think. I also need to think because I don't have the answer.
I think BA. Output
BA.
is BA. Yes.
You think this one, right? Is that what you think? B and then A? I'm sorry, is that from Hannah or Yi? Is it Hannah?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so you think it is B and then A, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I would agree, because in here we just declare and assign value of B, right, to value, and then we print that out. So for sure, first one is B, and then we come to this one. This is block scope, right? The content letter block scope. So that means this thing will not have any effect outside of this block, and that's why it is B. And we can verify that and see if that is right. So let's verify. Yep, so you're right, BA. So we can check the answer this way, B and an A, right? Okay, excellent. How about this one? The second, this one here. Is it BA or BB? Any idea? So this is a let, so meaning we can change values, right? Any idea, Anya or Luigi?
Might be BB because let can be changed. I'm not sure.
You think it is BB, right? This one?
Yeah, yeah, because
Yes,
I think
B
even
can
though they are scope, but let can be modified in like counts.
Okay, so do you agree, Hannah and Yi? Do you think it is BB?
I would go for BA.
BA, yeah. Can you explain why do you think it's BA?
I guess when you assign B, the middle one, and then you already bring B out, and it just let A out later.
Okay, so you think it's BA? Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Yes.
Okay, so you change your mind?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, that's fine. I will allow you to change your mind. Okay, so Hannah, do you agree it's BA or BB? What do you think, Hannah?
I agree with Yi.
Okay, BA. I would also agree it's BA. So this is tricky because it is a let, right? So you would think, initially you would think this means foo can be changed, right? However, remember let is a block scoped thing. So meaning whatever I do in this block has no effect outside of the block, right? So I assign B to foo, so I would print B first for sure. But the effect of this assignment is gone when we exit this block. That's why this will be A, and that's why it should be BA. So but let me confirm. If it is not BA, I will cry. Okay. Yeah, it's BA. So we are all right. BA, right? So this is the block scope. Okay,
But if you remove the second let, you be AA, AB, right? AA.
If I remove this second,
yeah, let. Yeah.
Okay, so if I remove this line, it will be easy, right? It will just be AA, right? Yeah. So basically, it's interesting, right? So this one has the same result as the first one, even though one is const and the other one is len. Doesn't matter because I have a block scope, and that is exactly the reason why I can do a const value b in here, because it is a constant, right? So I'm not supposed to be able to change it, right? So I will show you what I meant. So if I do something like this, right, and then I do const value equals b, what? No, it shouldn't allow me. Oh, this is very unexpected. I don't expect it will allow me to do this. Oh, okay, I see. So this is how it works in this console. If I declare again, it will ignore the previous one. But if I try to assign a new value to a already declared constant, it will not allow me. So and sorry. Oh, okay. I think just background noise. Yeah. So yeah. So these two have the same behavior because of the block scoping. Okay. So last one. How about this one? Would that print undefined or want to? So I should first explain what undefined means, right? So if I declare something but without assigning any value, and then you try to evaluate that, it will evaluate to undefined. Undefined meaning it is not defined, right? So um, so in this case, if I print full right after this line, it's guaranteed that it will print undefined. But how about if I print it from here after this assignment in this block? Do you think it will print 1, 2, 3, or do you think it will print undefined? Can I take Yuki this time? I'm just kidding. So any volunteer?
I go for
I think
undefined.
undefined.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's wise that you follow Yuki's answer. Yeah, so it's undefined. I will agree that because the assignment here has no effect outside of this block, right? So this block to this console statement, this block has no effect at all, right? And that's why if you do this, you will have the same effect as if you do let and then you print it out right away, because this block has no effect, right? So let's try that. Yep, it's undefined. So we are all good. Yeah, I think that's everything I want to cover today. So I hope the background, the history would give you a bit of appreciation and understanding of this language here. And also when you come across different versions or different flavors, when you come across ES5, ES6, TypeScript, you will know they are actually similar things, right? A little different, but similar. So once you learn JavaScript, you will know TypeScript, you will know ES6, ES5, ES7, and so on. They are all the same, similar things, I would say. And in terms of putting the JavaScript to the actual use in real life, right? We talk about in the very old days, people use DHTML, which is no longer used now. But what we do today, though, later on, I will cover a bit more later on. But we nowadays, when we generate web pages, right, it depends on what kind of web pages we are talking about, right? So if you write a web page for a bank, internet banking, for example, right, One possibility is to use something called React.js. So React.js. I think that will also be covered later in the Udemy course. So React.js is one of the most popular front-end framework that is JavaScript based that we use today to generate pages. So it will just output HTML, but it will generate that for you, right? So that you don't need to do DOM manipulation. So DOM manipulation meaning using JavaScript to change the DOM directly. Like when I change the color of the title, right? I interact with the DOM directly. That is no good. We don't do that in real life. In real life, we use some tool, some framework to help us generate and manage the generated DOM. We can talk about more about this later, but keep that in mind. So this is using React.js is another example of how we use JavaScript. And then on the server side, we can also use JavaScript nowadays. We have something called Node.js. So basically, all those are something.js because they are all JavaScript based. So when you know JavaScript, you can do front-end development, you can do back-end development, you can do both. There are lots of things you can do. So it's very useful. Yeah, I think that's everything. Any questions or any comments or anything before we wrap up? Do you find that useful, or is there anything you want us to do more later or less? Is it too much history, or is it too much questions? Let me know anytime if there are any comments. Okay. All right. So Yuki, do you have any anything?
No, no. I think it's good to have a background because otherwise we cannot. Sometimes you cannot understand why is how the JavaScript works, especially the cross browser. You have to test in Safari and Chrome,
Yeah.
Firefox.
Yes.
And now, yeah, it's very good to know.
Yeah, it's painful. Yeah, because I personally have this experience of having to deal with different browsers before the ES6 syntax become popular, right? Yeah, I still remember I have to write polyfills, some messy code, basically check if the browser is Internet Explorer.
Yeah,
I have to do this. It's crazy. It's terrible. Yeah. So nowadays we are luckier. We don't need to do that. Yeah, we have Babel and other transpiler to help us do that. All right, so I think we'll wrap that up here, and we'll continue and see you again next week.
Let me stop recording. Okay, thank you. If we have,
sorry.